who've been involved in putting today together believe very strongly that social and emotional learning skills and competencies underpin essential behaviors for education, for work, and for life in the 21st century. My name's Dominic Register. I'm a program director at Salzburg Global Seminar, which is an independent strategic convening organization based in Salzburg in Austria. And I'm also part of the executive committee of Karanga, the Global Alliance for Social Emotional Learning and Life Skills. Karanga is a Maori term meaning a call out in welcome, and one of our co-founders is part Maori. And when we were thinking about a name for the organization that we hoped would embody the spirit of what we were trying to achieve, Jojo was able to check with Maori elders, and they gave their blessing for us to use this term for this new alliance. And what we really wanted was a name for the organization that was inclusive and embodied the spirit of what we were trying to achieve. So we wanted a name which characterized the call out and welcome to educators and education stakeholders from around the world who want to help advance social and emotional learning as a key component of all our education systems. Today is actually the 1-year anniversary of when we first talked about Karanga publicly, which was in a statement on social and emotional learning that Salzburg Global published. Karanga as an idea really grew out of a body of work that we'd been organizing in Salzburg for a couple of years that was looking at different ways of mainstreaming social and emotional learning and why social and emotional learning was the correct response to so many of the different challenges that education systems and societies and economies around the world are facing. We have a really exciting program of events and communications beginning from today with this online conference. So if you're not already signed up to Karanga to receive the newsletters, which will begin from this month, then please do register for those through the Karanga website. Karanga is a collective of different education experts and organizations, and we are supported by an amazing steering committee of more than 40 education experts from around the world. They all contribute very generously of their time to help Karanga realize its mission. And one of those one of the key members of the steering committee is Mark Sparfel, who's one of the co-hosts for today, and he's going to talk to us now a little bit more about the SEL and Edu network, which he's helped establish. So Mark, over to you, and welcome.
Great. Thank you so much, Dominic. And again, happy happy United Nations. It's a mouthful, International Happiness Day, and thank you everybody for joining in. Obviously, we're looking inside everybody's homes while we're all working remote in many places across the world. So it was a challenge for me to find a calm place to come and talk to you. So thanks for joining us. You know, we know that emotions matter. They influence cognition, attention, and motivation, and they matter greatly in schools, which at the best of times is an emotional roller coaster, even more so now. The good thing for all of us is that shared challenges like we face right now also come with shared solutions. After the Salzburg seminar around social and emotional learning, I kicked off a group on Facebook, the Social Emotional Learning in Education group. It's a collective that has grown by about 100 people per week and is now sitting at around 4,200 highly active people. Now, this collective is now partnered with Committee for Children. You'll be hearing from Matt in a moment from there. And we're incredibly happy to join with the other supporting organisations you see at the bottom of this screen today to invite you to join us. I'll pop a link in the text chat along the way. You're welcome to share with your networks to join the SEL and Edu group. This afternoon, I'll be running a session specifically on the role technology can play in supporting social and emotional learning, and we encourage you to join that session too. We know that education right now, good news should travel fast. So my thanks to everybody joining the call today, to the organisers for bringing this event together. We all need a dose of happiness right now. Today is a great day for it. So back to you.
Thank you very much, Mark. And Thank you for the introduction. My name is Matt Pearsall. I'm going to be I'm from Committee for Children. We are an international nonprofit that's for 40 years has been working to help children thrive in a safe and peaceful world through social emotional learning. And it's really my pleasure to be able to to be a part of this amazing convening that we're happening today. I just want to share some housekeeping stuff with everybody who's attending. Please, first of all, we have a lot of speakers who are going to be coming today. If you are a speaker, please make sure that you're muted unless you are speaking, because we just want to make sure we're not talking over each other. And also for everyone who's participating, please, you see many people have found the chat boxes already. Feel free to take advantage of that to talk amongst yourselves while the conference is going on. Also, please take a look. There's a Q&A option as well. If you've got specific questions for the speakers, please place them in there so that we can take a look at them. And also, for all of you who are attending on Facebook or on Twitter, I'm trying to keep an eye on that as well. So if you've got questions, you can place them up in there and I'll try to pass them along to the speaker. And finally, for everyone who's watching this as a recording, really appreciate you coming along as well. And please enjoy the conference as we are having it. And with that, I think we can start it off. So Dominic, can you take it away for introducing our next speaker?
Yeah, happily. So I'm delighted to introduce the first keynote speaker for today, Shailendra Sharma, who's the Principal Advisor to the Director of Education in the Delhi government in India. Shailendra was part of the program in Salzburg in December 2018, where Karanga was first discussed as an idea. He's been absolutely instrumental in shaping the happiness curriculum, which is a major education initiative across schools in Delhi, with fantastic results from only 2 years of implementation. And Shailendra is going to talk us through some of the successes that the happiness curriculum has achieved, the genesis behind it, and where it's going to go next. So Shailendra, over to you.
Thanks, Dominic. Thanks, Matt, Mark, and I can see more than 110 participants have already joined. Welcome all of you. Can you hear me? Yep. Hi. Thanks. So it's good to be getting along at this point in time when globally everybody is worried about the spread of coronavirus. But I think we hope that everybody is safe at home, and we join here to discuss what we are doing in the sphere of social emotional learning across the world. Because in times like this, we really need interventions like the one we are doing here in India, Delhi. That this is probably one way to see how we live through these moments and come out as a better human being, better civilization. Matt, how do I operate my PowerPoint?
There should be a sharing option at the bottom of your screen. If you go down to the bottom of it, you see a little green share button. I can also, you got it? And then just select your presentation.
Got that. Yep. Is it visible now?
Yes.
Okay. So friends, I'm going to talk about happiness curriculum in the schools of Delhi government, India, which we started about 2 years back. We'll be completing just 2 years this academic session. This is going on in very well in the schools of Delhi. But before I get into the presentation, I would want to share with you that the context in which we are operating, we are implementing this curriculum is important. So there are three basic context in which we designed our curriculum and decided to implement it in all our schools across Delhi. First was the global context. Where are we with respect to the social emotional well-being? The second, that this is an issue which needs to be right at the core of the academic exercise. And the third important aspect was that we want it to be squarely inside our classroom and integrated fully with the curriculum. So if I were to talk about why did we need the intervention, I mean, I don't think there is any, there's a strong reason for doing that. If you look at global happiness, World Happiness Index, India is quite at the bottom. But besides that, we also have found that as soon as children enter in the teenage group, 1 in 4 children really struggle with issues like depression. And as we know that suicide is the second leading cause of death among people in the age group of 15 to 29 globally. So here are the real issues which our children start facing right early in their life. And if we do not address that as they grow up, it would lead to several other issues. So that was the reason why we thought of bringing happiness right at the core of our education setup. And when we look at the policy document of education in our country, what we really see is that if you look at the purpose of education, basically it talks about building knowledge, skills, and attitude. While we see that the current model, which is operational in the country, there's a lot on building knowledge and skills, but when we talk about attitude, it's quite vague. And not much has been done directly. There has been several standalone activities which different states, different school systems have been doing, but what do we mean by building the right kind of attitude is something which was not very clear. So when we looked at those documents, we created for ourselves in our own Delhi's policy that we need to define that the purpose of our education is to basically create confident, responsible, and capable individuals who should be collectively living to create happy and harmonious society. So if we have that as one of the key goals of education, we also need to look at the current challenges which basically come in the way of achieving that goal. And what we found that a lot of children who come to the school actually grow up in an adverse situation. There are different challenges that they face in their homes and in communities, and also the way school system or the academic setup is designed. There's a lot of pressure that the students very often face, the pressure of examination, the pressure of performance, and while we have been doing a lot on building the academic things of children, but not much used to happen on these aspects that the children have to face. So that led to, say, creation of the happiness curriculum. And we brought happiness curriculum right inside the classrooms. And the way this curriculum has been designed is basically through a set of things which I'll talk more about in my later slides. But basically the activities and the overall design of happiness curriculum is basically to develop abilities like critical thinking, enabling children to be problem solver, getting them to be able to express themselves in a safe environment, learn to work in collaboration with others, and also learn to actively build relationship with their peers, with their teachers, with their parents, and with the community at large. So basically what we try to do is that with a set of activities, here are these things that we intend to support children to acquire as we work with them closely. And this design is built on 3 key components which we call the triad of happiness. And we have tried to work through understanding as to how we can create a sustainable model of happiness. Uh, if you say this, what we are basically talking about is some kind of, say, hierarchy, uh, where you have, say, building happiness uh, through senses. So if I were to give an example, if I am eating an ice cream that I like, I would be feeling happy in that moment. So that is one form of happiness. Uh, Now, if we were to move a step further, that if we are, say, in harmony with our feeling, uh, this is slightly deeper feeling of happiness, which is basically if we are getting appreciated, we are getting acknowledged, but still a lot of thing is contingent upon how I am being treated and how happy I feel in that moment. But that's a notch above the sensory happiness that we are talking about. And that hierarchy where we place, where we, what we call sustainable happiness, is when we are more aware about ourselves and our thought, words, and actions are actually in harmony with each other. We know what we are doing, we know what we are talking about, and we are more aware about ourselves. So that's the level where we intend to reach through the set of activities that we have built in our happiness curriculum. And if I were to explain typically what this means, so a happiness class has basically 4 components. Uh, and these 4 components are mindfulness, story, activities, and expressions. So the way it is designed, that every day the children in the schools participate in happiness class. And we start with an activity, with a component called mindfulness. This is basically to enable children to concentrate their thought in that very moment. So for example, this I am sure many of us must have faced while growing up, while being in the school, that very often the children, the teachers or the parents would be expecting us as a student to be attentive, to be in the class, to listen to what is being talked about. And as individuals, our thoughts wander out. Uh, but and we would often be reprimanded or brought back to just focus on what is happening right now. But nobody actually teaches how to focus. Actually, in fact, that is not the part of regular schooling exercise in many contexts that we have seen. Now, mindfulness is an exercise that is done which is a form of meditation, where children sit quietly, close their eyes, and think about that particular moment. Try to be attentive with what sound they are hearing, their own breathing, their own thing. So this exercise brings them to the present moment, calms them down, and get them set for the rest of the activities during the day. So this is one very important component of happiness curriculum that we do. The second important component is a story. So what we have done is we have carefully selected several stories from our own local context, the context in which the children in Delhi are growing. And this story is narrated by the teacher. And children hear this story, and then the teacher opens up the class for discussion. So children get an opportunity to talk about what they just heard, whether they agree with the plot, whether they agree with what the character in the story did, and how would they try to interpret those actions. The deal for this activity is that every child should get an opportunity to express their mind, and there should not be any right or wrong answer for that. The teacher's brief is that she should hear every child, give every child an opportunity, and make sure that every child participates in it. Now, this is basically a paradigm shift for the teachers also, because traditionally what they have been doing in the class is that they would take a chapter, they'll run it past, talk to a couple of children, ask them to respond, and then she would move to the next. The engagement with every child in the class has rarely been being a part of the pedagogical process that is usually operational in our schools. But the story in happiness class is conducted in a manner that every child gets an opportunity to speak without having any kind of fear that what she's going to say, she might be reprimanded or corrected for that. So this is an opportunity for the children to engage in those discussions. Then the third component is activities. So there are a set of 20, 30 carefully designed activities which children are given as an assignment, as a task to do. For example, one such activity is gratitude. Children get to think about who are the people who are making contribution in their own in their own education. Identify very carefully. So when this activity started, actually there would be a general one or two set of people. You would want to thank your teacher, you would want to thank your parents, but as the activity deepens, children start thinking who are the people. So might be the guard who is standing at the gate of the school is also somebody who should be thanked. The person who comes to do the sanitation work should also be thanked. So the realm of people who are making contribution, they start thinking about it, and they think of thanking. And the last component is expression. We have assigned one day every week where it would be like a summary of everything that has been done during that week. So starting with mindfulness, what thought came to their mind, what did they feel at that point in time, which story they liked, or when they shared their thinking about that story, what is it that they missed out, or what is it that they liked about, or what is it that they did not like about, or in the activities, what did they do. So it's basically like a summary of whatever has happened during the week, which is what happens during the expression session, which as I said, happens every week. So this is what basically constitutes the happiness class, which happens in Delhi. And if I were to share the scale of that, so it's more than 1,000 schools in Delhi government which are having happiness class every day. We have in these classes children from kindergarten to grade 8, which is about 800,000 children currently enrolled in the schools. Every child participates in that, and these activities are conducted by about 21,000 teachers of Delhi government. And as I said earlier, we have every day happiness period, which these 800,000 children participate in, and it is facilitated by about 21,000 teachers. Now, as Dominic also shared, and I repeated, this year is the second year of happiness curriculum in the schools of Delhi government. So we are about to complete 2 successful academic sessions with this model. And some of the initial feedback or inputs that we have received from the team, which was deputed to regularly visit the school, see how it is going, support the teachers, get their input, talk to children, talk to parents. And some of the things that was repeatedly pointed to us by this team was that attention span among children have gone up. And how did they find out that usually what would happen is after every 10-15 minutes you would see some restlessness among children, which actually slowed down. So children could sit in the class and concentrate on what was happening for a longer duration. The team also noted that aggression among students have come down, and a lot of fight that used to happen among children on the small issues that has also significantly come down. We in Delhi have some schools which operate in 2 shifts because of space constraints. So some children attend the school in the first shift, which is called morning shift. Some children attend in the second shift. Usually it has been the complaint of the school principals that in the second shift, we have issues of children leaving the school earlier than the scheduled time, which they used to call truancy. Now, ever since happiness curriculum started in these schools, there has been the principals have noted reduction in the truancy of the students. Some schools have also reported that the test scores of children have also improved. But this one part we need to study more deeper to establish really the causal and effect relations on that. Also, one of the things that has been repeatedly pointed out to us, that there has been a better bonding among students and teachers. In fact, this we have got from many teachers who also shared with us that for the first time, perhaps they heard the voice of some children in the class. Because as I said, usually under the prevailing model, what teachers would do is to complete their chapter, um, take input from some children sitting in the front rows, and then move on to the next one. But the children really sitting on the last rows would not be as engaged as the children in the first row. So the result, teachers pointed out that we had not even heard the voices of some of those children, which, because the way happiness classes is designed, they got to hear some children for the first time. And they also got to understand the context from which these children are coming, the kind of situation they are coming from. So as a result, teachers also felt that we are more, I mean, our own rapport with the students have increased. In order to kind of say, study these impacts more deeply, and also to create a learning assessment tool with which we can regularly then assess the progress of children in happiness class, we have recently aligned with Brookings Institute. And in order to develop those tools, which we needed to be contextual, which we can use in the context in which our classes and children operate, Brookings did some preliminary studies. And what they have come up these are initial findings, and they also felt that the relationship among children have improved, and this they gathered from the feedback of the teachers. And the teachers also shared a very interesting thing, that they found that they have more control and bigger freedom to design their classroom. So unlike other regular curricular subjects where they feel tied down with respect to the flow of how they need to proceed, in the happiness class, they can proceed at their own pace, because the deal here is to engage with every child. So one teacher can do in the entire academic session 2 or 3 stories and have a lot of discussion with children. And if another teacher finds that she can do 5 stories, she's free to do. So teacher can determine their own pace. And also among teachers, what they found is that they've started to share their own learnings with each other, their own lesson plans, not just for the happiness class, but the other subjects that they teach. So the interpersonal relations between teachers have also improved as a result of that. Children now feel that they have more opportunity to interact with other children, their peers and with the teachers, and they can express their feeling, which they felt that there was very less opportunity earlier to do that. And also in the course of this sharing, the trust on the teacher to be able to share what this child is going through has also gone up. And we see more, participation of children in the class activities. And parents have also come and shared with the principals and the teachers that they find their own children to be more patient, and also the relations with their siblings have also gone up. So these are some of the learnings of 2 years of implementation of happiness curriculum in the schools of Delhi. At the beginning of the next academic sessions, we will hopefully be coming up with a more robust learning assessment tool. And by this time, as I said, the confidence of teachers and students and parents have also gone up. So now we feel is the right time to introduce a more robust tool to assess how different aspects are leading to attain the goal with which we have set out to implement happiness curriculum in our schools. Here is some of the feedback that we last year we organized Happiness Utsav, a celebration of the completion of 1 year of happiness curriculums in the schools. And here are some of the testimonials of the students, teachers, and parents. A child feels said that she's able to control her temper better. Similarly, teachers find that this is very useful, and they find it very useful in their own context. Thank you.
Shailendra, that was fantastic. Thank you so much for sharing all of that. I particularly liked the kind of emphasis on the inclusive practice and the observation from some of the teachers that they're hearing from many more students as a result of this new approach in class. There've been a ton of questions coming through, as you may well now see in your on the chat function and the Q&A. I've tried to collate them a little bit. When we started looking at social and emotional learning in Salzburg, and we were discussing it as the kind of importance of it as a global education reform agenda, then we found in conversations with ministries of education and international development banks and teachers and head teachers around the world that there was very broad acceptance of that, the idea that SEL was really important. But we heard fairly consistently that there were 3 different kinds of almost structural roadblock that would prevent education systems from making a pivot towards SEL. So there were a group of challenges around teacher training and adult understanding of the topic. There are a separate group of challenges around curriculum design and the recognition of extracurricular learning opportunities for students here. And then a third set of challenges around measurement and assessment. And although the focus and the nuance is obviously different in different contexts, broadly speaking, those were the 3 most significant structural roadblocks. So I've tried to collate the questions that have come through under those 3 headings. So if we begin with the teacher training component of that, and there've been a lot of questions about people asking how you trained teachers to make this, to make these adjustments in their own classroom practice and own classroom behavior, and whether there was any pushback from teachers or from teaching unions around this. So could you start by telling us a bit more about that process?
Well, yes. In fact, when we launched Happiness Curriculum in 2018, that was already the 3rd year of government's several reforms in the education sector, which were addressing some of the challenges that the teachers have traditionally faced in the school situation of Delhi. And in the course of those engagement of conversations, teachers have repeatedly brought the issue of aggression among children, restlessness among children, and what needs to be done. So one set of thought was that we should have a very strict discipline system where you could reprimand the child or expel the child or take punitive actions. But there was also other set of thinking which basically brought about that we need to have a more engaging mechanism to address these challenges which is coming. So when we propose in that context something like happiness curriculum, where the idea was basically to engage with children and reduce and address some of these issues that have been highlighted. So there was an acceptance right in the beginning among the teachers. So we did not actually face any resistance from teacher union or anybody coming to that this is not something that should be done. Now the second part was how do we do the training of the teachers on that part. So as I shared that this was a model which was implemented in all the schools. So as a result, the model of delivery itself has got to be so simple that it could be communicated easily. And therefore we designed this thing that what do we mean by happiness class? It is one period where you have to basically focus on these 4 components. So as a result, the communication was very simple, and the 2 things that they were expected to do, particularly the story and the activity part, if you see closely, the way good teaching learning practice is to happen in the classroom is basically like this. So if you are, say, teaching science, you're talking about photosynthesis, you would explain what photosynthesis means, and then basically talk to the children and get them what they felt about, and then build upon that. So as a result, when we created this module, and with the help of the team which had created organized training, one big orientation session was planned. And then we also, what we did was got one school, every school to identify one happiness coordinator, which would sit very closely with the curriculum design team. And it was the responsibility of this happiness coordinator to take those processes back in the school and share with all the teachers who were engaged in the happiness class in the school. So as a result, by talking among each other, getting to understand how this has to happen, teachers picked that up and did in their own context. So I would say that the simplicity of the model and the simple communication and engagement of one teacher from every school, and with the help of that one teacher reaching out to all other teachers in the school, was the model which we used to build the capacity of teachers to do something like that. So that was on the training component. Now on the curriculum, should I go ahead and address the second and the third?
If we could stick just for a second with the teacher training and the kind of wider issue of adult understanding of the topic. There was a really interesting question about whether you'd seen an impact in the communities in which the schools are situated because of this new approach, or whether you're getting interesting feedback from parents. There's that lovely quote that you've got in the final slide, I think, about one of the children saying that she realized her mother was one of the main sources of her happiness. And so just whether the relationship between school and parents has changed, and how the communities are reacting to this new approach.
So absolutely, I would say, if we were to just stick to parents and children, we have got similar kind of feedback from a lot of parents. Like we remember some parents sharing in the parents-teacher meet that when my child now comes back home, he asks me whether I have eaten or not. So a lot of relationship improvement between parents and children is what we have noticed. So yes, there is impact on that count.
What about for teachers' own well-being or teachers' own mental health? Is there a component of the training which helps teachers think about their own well-being, or the application of happiness principles to their own lives and own classroom practice?
Absolutely. In fact, Dominic, I would go to the extent of saying that it was like a collective learning experience of teacher and students. Usually in our classrooms, we have this hierarchy where the teacher is the repository of a senior, and so this hierarchy has always been there in our classrooms. In the happiness class, what we have noticed, because the teachers were also beginning, I mean, when children are coming up with different perspective, you do not have any set question or a set answer for that. So it was a learning exercise for the teachers also. And a lot of teachers have also, in the trainings, when we have those closed group sessions, they share that they have noticed their own perspective changing as a result of doing these activities for so many months in their schools. Their own perspective about children, like one of the things that I shared, that the teachers coming and sharing that I got to know some of the children in my class for the first time. Though I've been working with these children for years, but I never had the occasion to even hear their voice. So these are some of the things which the teachers themselves are discovering as they move along.
Obviously, like with many education systems around the world, the situation in Delhi is complicated at present because of coronavirus. And I think you told me yesterday that schools are now closed for the next couple of weeks. And are there, I suppose, do the approaches, or are you developing materials that can support parents with helping their children's learning at home or distance learning, or do you think of that as a future direction of development for the happiness curriculum?
No, absolutely. And the way we have built rapport with the parents over the last several years, we have already a platform to reach out to them. But of course, we have to have multi-pronged strategy to help them in this situation, because not many parents have access to those kind of resources that might promote distant learning. So as a result, what we are working on a couple of things. In fact, we have invited ideas from parents and teachers also, that how do you want us to support in this time? If we have to close down the school for longer than what we currently anticipate, how can we stay engaged? And one of the things that have come to us, I mean, I was scanning through all the feedbacks that we've received since yesterday, that how about building on the activities that we have been doing in the happiness class? Can we now increase the repository? And because parents are familiar with those activities, parents are familiar with those stories, so if we could send more stories, more activities through text message, or through, say, general FM channel, radio channels and all, probably they would be able to keep working with the children. So because of this kind of engagement that has happened between parents and school, we feel confident that we would be able to send out lot of ideas to the parents to stay engaged with the children and help them learn better.
Great, thank you. So if we could move on to the kind of second bundle of questions around curriculum design. And there were a few questions about, I suppose, about, first of all, differentiation of activity. So you said that the happiness curriculum is delivered to students from kindergarten through to grade 8. And so how have you differentiated the different activities, and what are, could you give some examples of the different age appropriate activities?
So, well, in the first year, what we basically had differentiated activities and stories in basically 3 big brackets. So there was one set of activities and stories for children from kindergarten to grade 2. There was another set of activities and stories for children from grade 3 to grade 5. And the third set was from grade 6 to 8. This year, we kind of expanded it further, and we had different activities and stories across different grades doing. But again, as I said, the key message to the teacher was that she should not feel any kind of compulsion to complete all story or all activity that has been prescribed. Those were just suggested set of activities and stories. She can proceed at her own pace. So that is one thing which is very clear. Second thing, when we were launching, this was a concern that was raised, and which is a concern in many contexts also, that how are you going to balance it with the scholastic activities, which is like your science, maths, language, teaching, and bringing social and emotional learning stuff in that. So how do you balance the time? Because those were considered to be more what you say, an integral part of the school setup. This is something which is more peripheral. But what we have been able to and that is why we picked up nursery to grade 8, because in those grades, as a government, we have more flexibility in choosing the curriculum with the help of our academic authorities. So we created the space in the school curriculum and put this time period. And this is what we hoped, and it is turning out in that direction also. That it's the same teacher who is doing that. So you have a science, maths, or English teacher who teaches science, maths, or English, but she also takes one period of happiness class. So the way she conducts her happiness class is also impacting the way she is teaching her science, maths, and English. So you can see a lot of cross-learning also happening and seeing the value. Teachers noted that if children are now paying more attention in the class, so the chapter that I used to take earlier 3 periods to complete, I can do it in 2. So similar kind of impact they see in the curricular subject as well. So as a result, what we see is that happiness class is kind of say also shaping the pedagogy in other subjects as well.
And in terms of the context for the different stories that you've used, then Delhi is obviously a very multicultural society, as is the whole of India. And have you looked for stories which are universal, or have you looked for stories which come from specific cultural groups, and then they're used across all the students?
Absolutely. So that is the job which our academic team who sits and builds the story or takes the stories from a different context does. India, interestingly, has a very rich culture of stories over the period, and there are the stories which have like survived thousands of years, and those we have also studied as kids. But also in the present context, also the team comes up with the stories, and then they decide which one to go. Usually there are certain principles that we follow, that the story should follow. The secular principle, it should be gender sensitive, it should not be hurting any sentiment. So there are certain checklists that we have, and once we clear all those, so we have those stories going. If I were to give you one example, if you have time, so there is a, do you have?
Yes.
So we have a story of um, 3 set of workers working on a construction site, and a person goes there and asks, what are you doing? So he asks the first person, and this person says, I am earning my living. The second person, he asks, what are you doing? And the second person says that well, I am breaking these rocks. And then he goes and asks the third person, what are you doing? And he said, well, I'm doing a very important job. I'm building a school here. So the construction is of a school which is going on, and there are 3 workers who are working on the site, and they have 3 different perspectives about that work. Now, once the teacher narrates this story, and she opens up this question, well, when you come to school, what was your feeling today when you were coming to the school? Or for example, when your mother asks you to go and fetch milk from the market, which of the 3 workers comes to you more closely? So you see, stories like this, which has a situation and different actors playing out, narrated by the teacher, and then children then pick it up and give their own views and perspective on that. So this is how the stories have been shortlisted and used.
Are the stories available, like for teachers in other parts of the world to look at? Is there a kind of story repository, or might that be available in the future?
That is available, but the only problem is those are in Hindi. We need to get it translated into English also, so that it can be shared more widely.
Right. So sticking with curriculum design, we had a good question about the application of this for students with special education needs, and whether there was a different approach for special education needs schools or for students with special education needs in mainstream schools.
So we the model that we follow in the Delhi government is of inclusive education. So we have children of special needs also coming in the class and studying with other children. And one of the principle, in fact, the engagement of every child and teacher personally ensuring that every child participates actually comes from the model of inclusive education that we follow. So every child getting an opportunity, other children waiting patiently to hear the views of this child is an important component. So as a result, the way we have designed our activities and stories, it is fairly inclusive, I would say.
And I suppose from what you were saying earlier about the general shift in having a much more inclusive atmosphere in the classroom must also help with that aspect of integration.
Absolutely, yeah.
So the final bundle of questions, we've got about 7 minutes left before we move to the next section of the conference, is around assessment. So there were a few questions about the baseline data that you used, and how do you know that the happiness curriculum is working beyond the kind of anecdotal reporting back from parents and teachers?
So, well, very consciously in the first and second year, we did not include formal assessment in the happiness class. Because the way assessment is understood in our context is very different. And one of the reasons why our regular curriculum of other subject and has moved in a particular direction is because assessment is seen in a light where teacher tend to then teach in a particular manner. So we did not want to want happiness curriculum also to suffer from that. We wanted to assure our teachers that first get this model established, do it at your own pace. There's absolutely no pressure of actually attaining certain result. Get the process in place first. Understand how it is done, and then we will slowly and gradually bring the assessment based upon what is the context in which you are operating and how we need to assess those things. So as a result, in the first 2 years, we did not use any formal assessment tool. It was the feedback that we got was based on the anecdotes and also the monitoring team that has been visiting and talking to teachers, students, and parents on a fairly extensive manner. And it is only this year that we have engaged with Brookings to work with us to create assessment tool which we can use from the next academic sessions. So then we will be able to give more formal kind of learning. We will be able to do more formal learning assessment from the next year onwards. We have not done that in the first 2 years.
But you did say, didn't you, that there is some early anecdotal evidence that academic results have gone up as a result
Absolutely,
of the pivot to the happiness curriculum?
Yeah, so those schools have seen, we have like a regular assessment, learning assessment that happens in those grades. So those schools have reported that earlier the pass percentage, what you say, the grade score was X and it is now Y. So this is how we were able to draw the correlation that these schools are also attributing the improvement in their grade scores to happiness class.
And that's really interesting, because I think that's consistent with many other studies around the world, isn't it? That there is a very positive correlation between the application of social and emotional learning practices and an increase in academic attainment. Because if you feel better about yourself, you'll learn better, and the brain is better able to process information and retain information in those contexts.
Yeah.
Have you looked at or are there plans to look at any kind of differentiation across socioeconomic groups, and whether the happiness curriculum has had a more significant impact on children growing up in different kinds of disadvantage?
No, Dominic, unfortunately, we have not got into that level of granularity to be able to say that.
Because I think there was a study from a group of schools, and Matt may know more about this because it may have been a Committee for Children study, but I think looking at the academic uplift that social and emotional learning interventions had on children growing up in poverty in different inner city school environments, and it was a really significant increase. Stephanie Jones, who's speaking later this morning, I think was involved in that study and may also be able to speak to that in her presentation.
Okay. Sure.
And so the final question really, I think, is it started in Delhi because the Indian school system is federalized, and is it now spreading to other parts of the country? And are you seeing the happiness curriculum applied exactly as it was in Delhi and other states, or is it being adapted and recontextualized?
We have seen a lot of curiosity about happiness curriculum. In fact, we get consistently education officers and ministers from different states coming to see the happiness class. In fact, last month we hosted the first lady from the United States, who during the visit of President Trump to India, to Delhi, one of the requests that came from his team was that the first lady wants to see happiness class. She has heard about that. We've also had ministers from Bangladesh, Afghanistan visiting happiness classes. Within India, also a lot of visitors from different states. So a lot of curiosity. Many states in India, for example, Andhra Pradesh, Telangana, there are several of them who wants to introduce happiness curriculum in their schools. We have offered to help them, but we also share with them our experience. And the first question that you asked about how teachers and teachers unions have taken that. And I began by responding that Delhi, after 2 or 3 years of introducing several reforms in the overall school system, that introduced happiness. So there was receptivity among the teachers and they were ready to accept that thing. So what we are advising, we are suggesting those states is to talk to the teachers, get them on board first. Because the model, it has worked in Delhi in a particular context because there was a support that the government was giving to it. If the states are committed to give similar kind of support, it is going to work. So as a result, we are in touch with several states and absolutely happy to share our model and help them build their own.
Fantastic. Shailendra, thank you so much for the presentation and for answering all of the questions. If it's okay with you, then we'll share the presentation with everyone who's been following the conversation. There's been a lot of requests for that. And yeah, thank you again on behalf of everyone. This has been a fantastic opening to the conference.
Thank you so much.
I am now going to hand back to Matt, who's going to take us through the next portion around snapshots from the front line. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Shailendra. It was wonderful to be able to hear what you had to say. I was super excited to get to learn more about what you're up to. We're going to move on to the next section of the conference right now, and I am very excited about this. This is going to be a chance for us to hear brief speed sessions from people all around the world that are doing really interesting work in their communities around social emotional learning. So we're going to get to hear from 4 people coming up here: Susanna Calvary, Cassia Page, Gunjan Tamar, and Niru Mittal. And we're going to be starting on, and for those of you who just heard your name called, it's your turn. We're about to get started. Suzanne, can we start with you? Susanna?
Hi, everybody. Sure, I'm happy to. I'm going to go ahead and share a screen because what I have to share today, while not extensive in information, will probably be benefited by seeing it on my screen, but looks like I need to open it again first. Thank you for waiting. Thought I had it all set up and ready. Well, let's see. It's not giving me my option. Okay, I think I got it. I think we're in.
Yay.
All right. So when Matt asked if I would be willing to share some of my experiences, I started talking a little bit about what I do in the schools, but primarily right now where I've been super active in SEL is actually with the Scouts. So the Scouts is a nonprofit organization, and I know it is worldwide, but for those of you who aren't familiar with it, I work with an organization called the Cub Scouts, and it is a character building and leadership program that is meant for children in grades kindergarten through 5. And they then move into a different scouting level at that point. But the Scouts have a large degree of character character programming available to them. They have a really strong curriculum for the different types of activities that students can do, that young people do. I serve right now in charge of what we call a pack, which is the grouping of students from multiple schools in grades K through 5 in the scouting program. And then I also serve as a den leader. The den is the smaller group of scouts that are grade level specific. And while I'm very impressed with the character specifics in the program, I also wanted to move us further into social emotional learning in specific with the small groups and also with the large group. And so in order to do that, I took a look at what the Scout law is and started thinking about the ways that students who are already focusing on children who are already focusing on things such as being loyal, helpful, friendly, courteous, kind, brave, reverent, how these fit into our models of social emotional learning. And I started thinking about, well, let's see, we've got some cooperation aspects that are important here. Empathy comes up over and over again as we're working with these youth. Self-regulation is also a big part of working with small groups as well as large groups. Environmental awareness might not, oops, I can't spell when I'm typing or when I'm writing and talking at the same time. But environmental awareness was a big one that I wanted to bring into our students that actually ties into most of these other aspects. And then mindfulness. Mindfulness is not necessarily a part of the curriculum of Scouts in general, but I wanted to add it. So wanted to give you some examples really quickly of how that looks within our pack and den structure. Cooperation is a big part of any of our group events. So we host little car racing events. We host bottle rocket building and shooting events. We host camping events. We host food drive events. And in all of these events, our students are being asked to work together and to come up with basically make the event what they want it to be. So cooperation finds itself in quite a lot of our different areas in Scouting. Secondly, empathy. This is one that for me was incredibly important because at the developmental stages of the lower grades, we find a lot of self-focused behavior. And so trying to turn students or children towards a more outward focus has been very important for me. A couple of ways that we've done this is by hosting food drives, by collecting extra candy during Halloween time and actually donating that to our troops, to the military troops overseas. Also by thinking about what our different service members need and by writing letters of thanks to them. We also brought in, I should be writing this, we also brought in service dog handlers and their dogs recently. And the children had an opportunity to learn about what service dogs do in our community, how they support the people that they're assigned to, how they're trained. And then the service dog handlers also taught the children how to train the dogs and allowed each child to then practice the skills with the dogs that they brought in. So not only are students becoming more understanding of the different tools and different services that are provided, but also of the people who are invested in these different parts of our economy and our world around us. We also we do things such as, well, let's see, move on to the next one, environmental awareness or self-regulation. We have kids who have never gone camping before, who have never built anything with their hands, who have never cooked anything. So we participate in a lot of cooking activities, art making activities, and also building activities, and students are building their understanding of skills as well as having to self-regulate their behavior. Students who are using a knife for the first time, for example, have to learn about knife safety and how to use knives properly, particularly when in a group setting. We built birdhouses for all of our areas and that the children live in, and the students handled nails and hammers for the first time in their lives. So that was, of course, with little kindergartners, 5-year-olds, very interesting experience. But they have to determine what they're feeling and then how they're going to express those emotions in a healthy manner, and sometimes whether or not they need to remove themselves from the activity. And I think that that's also a valuable thing that we're teaching these children, is that sometimes if you get too overworked, if your emotions are too strong for you to express them healthily, then you actually do step out and then you can come back later. So those are some of the self-regulation skills that we're teaching them. Likewise, when I did add environmental awareness, so I'm going to keep birdhouses in here. We also have looked into I've had the students do, the children, I call them students all the time because I'm a teacher, but they're not my students when they're at Cub Scouts, but we've looked into different issues of animal welfare. So students had to research animals who were endangered and then present in Flipgrid, actually, in a video recording tool about the animal that they had researched and what they needed to know about that animal. So we're moving them slowly along the path to taking responsibility for making changes that are sustainable in their world, by also understanding what's going on, not just locally, but globally. And then finally, I'm also trying to work with them on mindfulness. And to this end, we recently had an evening event where children could come with an adult and participate in a Minecraft Education Edition lesson called The Mindful Night. And this lesson was published in January of this year. It's a quest form where the students are pages who are trying to attempt to become a knight, and they have to go through 4 mindfulness challenges in order to become a knight. And they learn about deep breathing, they learn about being present in the moment, they learn about self-regulation and emotional identification. So we did this together as a group, and it was a really fascinating experience. I had a little girl, when I asked her, how are you feeling? She said, I don't want to share my feelings. I don't want people to know how I'm feeling. And then I had other little ones who were saying, oh, this is so great. I'm having so much fun. So recognizing the differences in ability to express their emotions or even to define their emotions was a really valuable part of this particular activity. This one was also cross grade levels. So this was kinder through grade 3 in the room for this task. But Matt, I think I'm probably at about my 8-minute limit. So
you are right there. This has been awesome. So thank you so much. I really like it. As a former scout, it's really inspiring to hear the work that you're doing.
Oh, thank you.
So thank you very much. Next person up is, drum roll please, is Cassia Page, who's joining us from Poland, and we would love to hear a little bit about the work you're doing around social emotional learning. So take it away, Cassia.
Okay, thank you. Hello, good morning, good day, dzień dobry. Okay, I'm from Radom, which is about 100 kilometers south of Warsaw, and I teach in a technical high school. So my students are, 15 to 20 years old, all the teenagers and younger adults. So we educate them we educate future IT specialists, future mechatronic engineers, and future electricians. So initially, when I was asked to talk about social and emotional learning in our school, I panicked. And I was a bit skeptical. Well, we teach them to prepare, we give them knowledge, we teach them to pass their final exams really well. Okay, but on reflection, when I put a pen to paper and started thinking, okay, I have a whole list of things that are actually happening in this social and emotional area in our school. So, things like happening, the need at Christmas time, helping care for animals in shelters. I myself am involved in the European Union projects, exchange projects. And this is really emotional when you see kids, going to meeting other students from the cultures, cooking with them, taking part, with their family celebrations and, seeing different culture. Okay, but I'm going to talk about one project that actually is in the strict sense, is the social and emotional project. It's supported by the Polish Children and Youth Foundation. It's a non-profit organization which fosters all-around development of children. So, I don't know, provide equal education opportunities, address youth bullying, and so on. The project is run by two teachers, a business studies teacher, Dorota Musionek, and a career counselor, Tomek Nagnowski. And it's called Think, Work, Cooperate, Training for Social Skills. It's composed of 5 stages. The first stage is what was happening at school, and the focus was to gain the ability to manage your own personal skills. So kids were supposed to understanding their emotions, how to manage their strong emotions, stress management, how to be positive, assertive. Maybe I will tell you a little bit about some exercises they had to do during the first stage of this project. So, for example, they had to work in a group, and in a group they had to find what they had in common. So they found out they are all active, or they are all interested in the world. But then they had to distinguish individual features that would be needed for a particular task, particular job. So, for example, what skills do I need to conduct a questionnaire among other students? Other exercises were, for example, breathing trainings, methods, mindfulness, meditation techniques. A very, very interesting workshop it was supposed to last 45 minutes, lasted 1.5 hours. It was about trust and gratitude. So our students, some of them, didn't realize how much they should be grateful to their close people, to their families, and they've never expressed their gratitude. So, they mainly were talking about parents, grandparents, but one person mentioned that a teacher. So that was a very simple, but a very, very, very powerful exercise. Then stage 2 was 20 hours of work where students from other schools, because the project actually involved 5 schools from Poland. So all 150 students from 5 schools in Poland met together for the weekend, and they were doing some other, this time, more social-oriented skills, and how to use their skills in cooperation and in a group work. They were reaching out this time they were reaching out to other people. And then one of the exercises was to recognize the principles of persuasion. So, for example, they were given cards with some slogans, some phrases on them, and they had to, for example, say that match this slogan with a principle, for example, of authority. So if the card says, a famous professor says, it's a principle of authority. And again, they realized how useful it is how useful could be in everyday life, in advertising, in a job search, or in persuasion. Stage 3 was the practical stage, and here they had to come up with a real project, practical project, and which would fulfill social needs. So started with brainstorming, there were many ideas, and then the 2 groups had to make decisions. One team, run by Dorota, decided to clean the forest and then install benches in the school neighborhood. Tomek's group created, they're going to create a relaxation and meditation area in our school. So they've already done the planning. They calculated the costs. They had a shopping list. They have already ordered bean bags and the dividing screen, and they found a place in the school. Of course, it's on the top floor, on the 2nd floor, in the darkest corner of the school. Now we are waiting for the delivery. Of course, we don't know when it will happen. We are, we are not having lessons now. And in front of us, ahead of us, there is stage 4 and stage 5. Stage 4 will be visiting work marketplaces, again, to be up to students to decide where they want to go, what businesses they want to visit. And stage 5, the evaluation of a project. So students are going to think how to maintain it, how not to lose it, so it doesn't finish when the project finishes. And the very, very last point, part of the recruitment of students was to fill in the questionnaire. And there are questions regarding the level of social skills. When the project finishes, they're going to do the same. They're going to fill in the same questionnaire. So I think it'll be very, very interesting for teachers, for the organizers of this project, and I think especially for the students themselves to see, the difference in the answers. Okay, so I don't know the time. I know how long it took.
Oh, that was perfect, Cassia. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you. It's
really been a pleasure to hear about your work, and exciting. So thank you. And we are going to move on now to our next speed session. And next person up is Gunjan Tomar. She's going to talk about empathy, SEL, and design thinking. So Gunjan, thank you so much.
Thank you, Matt. Namaste from India. How are you all? Hope you all are doing well in the time of distress when coronavirus is there all over the world. I'm just going to share my presentation with you all. Give me just a minute, just 1 minute to share. Hello. A little SEL component for all of us at this time of distress when, the world is battling with coronavirus and we all are, dealing with it bravely. Just a little line from which I'm going to read for you all, and you need to just listen to it and we all will reflect on it. Listening to music is not cancelled. Quality time with our families is not cancelled. Reading a book is not cancelled. Having a real conversation with friends is not cancelled. Singing out loud is not cancelled. Laughing out loud is not cancelled. Sharing hope with others has not been cancelled. And connect to what was disconnected. Let's embrace to what we have. With this, we begin the presentation. When we talk about social emotional learning, we talk about the components of social emotional learning, which are the 5 major components, which include social awareness, relationship skills, self-awareness, responsible decision making, and self-management. When we talk about all these, if I'm aware of myself, my behavior with my behavior, my body mechanism, and my ins and outs, I can manage myself very well. If I'm able to manage myself very well, I am aware of myself as a whole, and it gives me an opportunity or a privilege to develop social awareness, which means I know myself better. And if I know myself better, I will be able to know my friends better. I will be able to know people better, because I understand that we all are unique and we all have our strengths and weaknesses. Once I become aware of the people around me and am able to know well, I develop long-lasting relationships with them, and by understanding their behavior and them as a person. All these aspects help me in taking a responsible decision in my day-to-day life. As I understand myself, I understand the people around, I ensure that what I think, what I do is, and how I act is going to impact me as well as my community. So I become a responsible decision maker. For us, it was very, seamless or very convenient to integrate social emotional learning with our curriculum, which when we talk about our curriculum is a skill-based curriculum. I'm a learning support facilitator as well as a part of social emotional learning in my school. So when we talk about social emotional skills, we can easily align it with approaches to learning, which talks about thinking skills, social skills, communication skills, and self-management skills. Holistically thinking, it blends so well with our curriculum skills, which are approaches of learning. Self-awareness and self-management can be seamlessly aligned to self-management skills, which includes organization, affective skills, and reflection. Social awareness and relationship skills can be, aligned to social skills in our, when you talk about approaches to learning. And when we talk about responsible decision making is a result of how well the problem is being thought of, how well it is being researched about, and how well it is being communicated. So this is how we thought of aligning social emotional learning as an integral part of our curriculum. SEL through the lens of design thinking, learning design thinking way. We all are designers. So this approach is generally taken when we approach a discipline. So we thought of, using this approach explicitly as well as implicitly in the curriculum. When we talk about design thinking, empathy is the first step in design thinking. If we are able to empathize with the user, the solution to the problem is more better, more precise as compared to the ones which, lack empathy. With empathy, we are able to define the problem well, we are able to brainstorm the ideas well, we are able to come up to the appropriate solution to the problem. So that was the approach that we took for learning. And empathy map helped us a lot in this. Empathy map was something that was designed when that was being taken when we wanted the user to understand, what empathy is from the perspective of the user. And when I say user, when we say empathy, it means, putting yourself into the shoes of others, of what it sounds like, what the problem sounds like to the user, what he or she thinks about the problem, what he or she feels like doing about the problem, and what he or she, kind of do with the problem. So these were the aspects. How do they see? How do they hear? How do they feel? How do they do? So these aspects we had encouraged our students to, reflect on when they are trying to approach a problem. So we integrated SEL in learning to explicitly as well as implicitly. Explicitly, just to make them understand, what is the relevance of empathy. We did it in our form tutor period, which are class teacher periods, interaction time with the teachers, and circle time. Implicitly, we integrated SEL in the curriculum in various disciplines. This is how we did it. It was a collaborative project of 4 or 5 schools where we facilitators from different domains came together and approached this problem of instilling empathy, using empathy for instilling values in children, and also reflecting on how is it impacting their learning in school. So the journey began with the setting of stage where moodometers were being put physically as well as online to gauge the mood of the class. When I say the mood of the class helped the facilitators to know, what the class was like. And based on, what the emotions, what the class was like, facilitators could tweak their plan, facilitators could make modifications in the plan. And it was observed that, the learning was more meaningful compared to the one which the facilitators had already thought about. Online moodometers and worry walls, we had come up with the idea of worry walls, where students would anonymously put their worries. Maybe there is a bullying issue, maybe there is something, there is a separation going on in the family. So where these problems were discussed with the class during circle time, this gave an opportunity to all the learners to become the stakeholders of the problem instead of adult intervening the problems and solving the problems for them. This also helped them to get the perspective of a person who is actually looking into the problem, who is going through this problem. And they could based on what the problem was, they suggested various solutions to the problem, and the solution that suited best was thought about and was implemented. When these circle time sessions, when this explicit cell address sessions were being done, it helped children to reflect on their own behavior and become more compassionate, more empathetic towards their peers and adults in school. We did one activity, like what you say I do activity, to help students understand the importance, the value of empathy, which was like, there were these two children sitting back to back, and one was instructing the other child, and the other child was supposed to make what she is instructing her. So if the communication, if the person who was making was able to understand, and if the person who was speaking was able to communicate it correctly, they would get the desired results. So we had also, called guest speaker sessions. We had invited Lynn to our school. I did a design thinking workshop to help students understand, how empathy plays an important role in understanding the problem and in solving the problem effectively while they are dealing with it. So we used various learning engagements to give them an experience of learning. This is about the disciplinary aspect of learning when we talk about implicit implementation of SEL in learning. So we had shown them videos. They were given a freedom to demonstrate their understanding to the medium of their choice. Today's generation being a generation of multiple intelligence and technology, so we have incorporated these elements in learning, which made learning more meaningful, more engaging, and more relevant to the learners.
All right, thank you so much, Gunjan. That was great. Thank you, and I appreciate hearing all of the work that you've been doing. And I look forward to learning more about it. 10 minutes just isn't enough. We're going to move on to our final speed session speaker, Neera Mittal, who's going to talk about integrating technology to teach SEL in everyday classrooms. So, Neera, you are ready to take it away.
I have to unmute myself. Hi, thank you, Matt. Thank you, everyone. I'm going to take on from here. So I'm going to quickly share my presentation first. Okay, here it is. Hope everyone can see this.
Yep, it's coming through. Thank you.
All right. So my topic is basically hacking happiness in the classroom using some technology tools, which I really love to do in my class. My name is Neera Mittal. I'm from SRDAV Public School, Delhi. Okay. Fine. I think I'm okay now.
Yes.
So yeah, okay. I have been using a lot of tools to implement SEL in my classroom. Now, before going on to that, first of all, why do we actually need to bring about SEL in our classrooms in today's perspective? So as research would have it, we have moved into the age of AI and machine learning. The ever-changing landscape of technology demands that continuous upgradation. But actually, prospective employees are looking beyond mere technical and cognitive skills. They are actually looking for emotional quotient. So they want employees who are emotionally sufficient. So that's why we need to integrate these skills into our classrooms. These are some basic skills. I think all of the speakers have discussed about this, so I would not go into this. So I'll be talking about developing these core abilities, which is actually critical to the child's development as it directly impacts the success and happiness in the real world. So research has shown that there is a happiness skill set. These are the basic emotions which are required: human connections, positive outlook, mindfulness, purpose, and so on, to be happy. So combining all these skills with academic development using technology actually creates high-class quality learning experiences and environments that actually empower students to be more effective contributors in their classrooms today and in their workplaces tomorrow. So using all these wonderful tools, I've been using them in my class, I've been able to inculcate social emotional learning in my students to a certain extent. So I'll be looking at these tools one by one in a quick succession. The first one is Flipgrid. It is a free video tool that enhances students' voice, and I use this tool to enhance the SEL skill of gratitude. So how do I use it? Let's see. I have created a Flipgrid called the gratitude wall, and I've shared it with the students. Each student in the class recalls at least 3 people who have helped them during the day. For example, a classmate, a peon, a teacher, the gatekeeper, anyone. The child can recall any 3 people. Now what the child has to do is that child has to speak up and say thank you to those people on this Flipgrid. It is basically a video tool. This can be done on a daily or a weekly basis. So what happens is the message reaches the helpers as well as the children. So with all those feelings coming out in the form of words, students have now developed a habit of being thankful. So they are thankful, which is a great relief to us all. This is my gratitude wall with all my students speaking up. I put smileys there. So the next tool is Sway. It is a free online digital storytelling tool. It is very easy to use and it has got lots of design options. So I use it to enhance the SEL skill of kindness. What happens is each student has created a Sway called My Kindness Diary. What I require them is to do is they will chronicle their acts of kindness. For example, whatever kindness, maybe a small gesture of helping a blind lady or a blind man cross the street, or any other gesture which can be there from their everyday life experiences, maybe present or past, they can actually write it down in this kindness diary. So at the end of the month, what I do is I try and have a presentation where the students, they present their Sway. This actually inspires the students to continue their kindness. It also inspires others, you know. So these experiences actually inculcate the habit of being kind to others. And it has now become a regular feature. So here is a kindness diary example of one of my students. The next tool is Skype. Skype in the classroom is a incredible tool, I would say, which is provided by Microsoft for free. And it can it actually allows educators to connect classroom to the entire world. It is a wonderful tool to enhance human relationships, which is again a core SEL competence tool. So if I use Skype to connect classrooms globally, there are lots of activities which actually facilitate virtual cultural exchange programs. Like we had a cultural exchange program with Sweden, with Emma last week only. So we have a lot of activities which actually help students to bond. So once they bond, they actually share, and that creates a lot of positive energy. Students also can, some of my students have taken up some sustainable global projects like the climate change project. We also have our own project, the Safe Spaces project. All this is we are able to do it using Skype. And we can actually create long lasting human relationships using this tool. And actually with this practice of having a Skype on a global basis has laid the foundations of very strong relationships, not only with my students, also my teachers. Like, you know, I have a great PLN now. So these are some of the Skype sessions. We have had numerous Skype sessions here. So this is one of my friends, Dondi, who lives in Hungary, and we are still we are connected with each other. And like, you know, it's a constant exchange of views and culture. It helps the students a lot. Another tool which I use to enhance purposeful learning in my class is Minecraft. Minecraft in education is a platform which actually uses gamification. So students create worlds in Minecraft to model lessons in, say, chemistry or programming. But I also use Minecraft in a different way. I use it to inculcate empathy in students. For example, I asked them to explore a solution for some real world problems which are being faced by the world. So right now we have this coronavirus problem coming up, and from home itself, from my home, I've asked students to actually create a world where all the You know, we should have solutions. We should have the do's and don'ts of during the virus outbreak and how to overcome this virus outbreak. So Minecraft offers a virtual solution to so many world's problems. So it inculcates empathy in students. Students actually have a purpose. They have something to look forward to when they come to class. So my class has actually become more productive, and students, they feel contented because they have helped solve a problem in the world, maybe virtually. These are some of the worlds created by my students. Another tool which I really love to use is OneNote and the immersive reader feature in that. It is actually a tool which helps students to set positive goals. It has got amazing features, you know, like I can easily implement differentiated learning, like say for a class of 50 students. I can teach students through immersive reader. Immersive reader is a tool which focuses on slow learners and underachievers, and also specialized students with some difficulties in learning. So this tool actually helps students set up positive, achievable goals, and students can learn at their own pace. So my classroom is now stress-free, inclusive, with clear learning outcomes for each child. Each child has set his or her own goals, which they can actually achieve after learning at their own pace, which is something which is very positive. It has really improved my classroom.
Thank you
This
so
is the
Oh, it's the last one? Okay.
Yeah. So the last tool which I have used is for mindfulness is Paint. Students can go along doing so many mindful activities like drawing, coloring, and this tool has really helped set up my classroom. I've also created a happiness app, which is actually inspired by the Delhi government. That's why I was asking if Mr. Shailendra will be there. So we can use this app, which is there in the Play Store, which has got all these tools which I've discussed. Thank you so much. Thank you, Matt.
Thank you, Nero. That was great. It was not just to hear about the all of these tools, but also to see how you're using them in the classroom. As I think these really concrete examples are incredibly helpful. So thank you so much for joining us. And that brings the end to our snapshot session. Thank you to everybody who joined us, and we're going to be moving on to our next keynote. Just a second, let me. All right, our next keynote is going to be Marcela Mora Almeida from the pedagogical director of Instituto Vila Educau in Brazil. It's an NGO focused on social emotional learning, and it's implementing Programa Compasso in Brazil's public education system. She and her colleagues have been doing amazing work working with government and schools and teachers and students at all levels and at very high at scale in Brazil. And she's going to talk to us about the work that she's doing. Marcela holds a master in philosophy from PUCSP and is currently compiling a specialized course on transformative education. She also teaches courses on social emotional learning at the Instituto de Ciências Sapiente. I apologize for my poor Portuguese pronunciation, everybody. So without further ado, I want to welcome Marcela.
Hello, everyone. Thank you very much, Matt, for this invitation. It's a pleasure for me to talk about our work here in Brazil. And now in these times that we have to connect by online connection, so that's the way that we can talk about our experience, and then
yeah, this is the right format for the time, I think.
Yeah.
So, so I'm really excited, and so for everybody attending, this is going to be a conversation between between Marcela and myself, so we don't worry about PowerPoints or anything like that. You just get to sit back and relax. And I'm just going to start off by saying I'm really excited to hear about your work, because I know about your work sort of tangentially, since you've been working with Committee for Children, but I don't actually know a lot about it. And so I want to be able to learn more, because I know that my colleagues are super excited about what you're doing, and I'm excited to hear about it as well. So I'm wondering if you can just start by sharing some background on the work you're doing, bringing social emotional learning to Brazilian schools.
Okay, thank you very much. And I'm gonna start and talk about our work, but if you want to ask me something to guide our conversation, feel free for doing this. So we are with Committee for Children and Second Step since 2014. That's when we started to adapt the program for Brazil. We started in 2015 in a pilot project with 17 schools to see how this program, that's even if it's an international program, universal for everyone who has emotions and feelings, we had to feel how this is working in Brazil. So we started in the first year, and we made a research to see what is going good and what is going bad in this first year to adapt the whole thing for Brazil. Most of them, I hope, luckily, most of the things were very good. Teachers liked the project for the first year. They felt very much the difference in their classes, about the disciplines of the students, the behaviors, their behaviors. So we use this to showing our work here with Programa Compasso and Second Step, to showing this for the other municipalities and growing in Brazil. Now we are in 300 schools around Brazil. We have about 2,200 kids that work in my Programa Compasso, 200, yes, I think the number is this. We have Programa Compasso in the north, in the south of Brazil, and we always talking about the importance of the implementation. The program is amazing, wonderful, but we know that if you don't have a very organizing implementation, we have troubles to make the children get the results. So we have, I think I'm gonna talk about what we do here in Brazil to get this ideal implementation. First of all, I think everyone's who works with CASEL, I don't know how you spell in English, CASEL, has the same orientations about the implementations and what this is how be a systematic implementation. So we see in practices that this is very important. So if you have it, we have the curriculum, we have the program in the classroom, but we watch for the teachers, we look for the teachers, for the families, for the whole team in the schools. So first of all, we need to do in-personal trainings. This is fundamental here in Brazil. And if you ask me why, I think we just need to look in their eyes. I think we have to give our hands for them and say, this is not much more, one more thing that you having in your school. We know that they have some kind of resistances about new things. They have so many things to do. They are very stressful, and it's coming one more thing for the schools. And the first thing that we ask for them is, what's your big challenge in schools? And we weigh them, bring for us, they say, and they say, always say our students' behavior, our connections, our disciplines, they have problems with keeping attentions and stuff like this. So we say, this program is for you. This is designed for you. So they will opening, they starting to open to listen what it really happens. And you know that it's fundamental that we always bring them to the experiences. So in these 5 years working with these trainings, now we know that we have to speak less and make them feel the things, experience the things. So this is changing a lot. Now, for example, in Boa Vista, Roraima, that the municipality that we are in the 3rd year with the whole schools from the municipality, the teachers now are having not trainings, but workshops. We are working with their emotions and feelings and how do they copy with that. Another way that we are working, and it's very important, it's the workbook students. The second step were activities that they printed in school and bring home. But in Brazil, you have problems with the public systems to have equipments, and the print is not, will be very common for them. Then we decided to organize our workbook, and this was very, very plus than our expectation. I don't know how to explain now, but it becomes something that they really love, this book. This book means that they have their drawings, their self-knowledge inside, their experiences, the possibility to talk with their parents and to be closer of them. So they keep this workbook with them, and that really means something for them. So it was very good goal for us to make them to have this special thing that it really means social and emotional improvement for them.
I just want to say something about the workbook. I just want to jump in for a moment and say that here on our end in the United States, we were very skeptical that you were creating a workbook at the beginning, because we try very hard to avoid things like that here. But then to hear about just what you said about how it became such an important thing to the kids that were using it and how it really helped them connect with the curriculum, we were super surprised. And I still get a little chills when you talk about it, because I think it's a really neat and unexpected part of the program.
Sometimes we saw some months ago a kid that she put in a video in YouTube to showing her caderno do programa Compasso, her student workbook. So she was talking about how she loves the workbook and showing for others like her, these new kids in the YouTube nowadays. And her subject was this workbook. So this is another thing that we did in different from the second step. And then this is a new thing that we are planning to do this year. We started last year in a format, in a kind of framework, and now we are changing a little bit for the families. First, we just had a meeting at school to show our program and the benefits and how the families could help us in this developing of the social and emotional learning of their kids, and how could they do this in family. But normally it was about 1 hour in the school, in the middle of other disciplines meetings, but it was okay. But we had a questionnaire with the teachers last year in Boa Vista with 700 teachers. Then we decided to do a different thing this year. We're starting to do like workshops for the families. So we have 4 the units from Compasso, from second step. We work with the families as well. So in the first one that we are learning skills, we're talking about assertive communications, and we call the families to the school to work with them. What is this kind of assertive communication, all of this. So we are trying to make them feel like we're doing of the teachers. We are trying to bring families to this development as well. So now,
and how successful you've been in getting the families to participate. Sometimes that can be a real challenge.
Yes, the biggest challenge that the teachers bring to us about the school lives of the kids is the participation of the families. To bring families to the school is really a big challenge for the schools here in Brazil. That's why we're starting to do this.
Mm-hmm.
And Boa Vista just loved this project and working together. And we also are implementing, we're sending messages from the families for the families.
Mm.
Like in the, here we use WhatsApp, but we send some messages for them to keep them together, to bring some ideas to what they can do, to ask for their children. Very simple messages, but that they has very good results. We did this before in other municipalities, and now we are implementing for the elementary school.
Mm-hmm. That's wonderful. I think one of the things I want to make sure that we get to is to talk a little bit about the research you're doing, because I think that it's really important that not only are you rolling out these programs and you're having the success, but that you're actually getting a chance to do research and to come up with with actual numbers around the effects you're having in the work that you're doing. So could you share a little bit about that with us?
Yeah, sure. We have different kinds of monitorations, the programs. We have a big research. We did a big research with Dana McCoy. She's a Harvard teacher from Harvard University, and with Fundação Getúlio Vargas from Brazil, they did a evaluation study in Rio de Janeiro. They finished this research in 2018, but now she's almost publication, this study. And we had very specific situations in Rio. But we also do, we did last year in Boa Vista a big questionnaire that we did, our group with the Secretary of Education there. We did a questionnaire to listen about the changing behaviors of the students and to see how they think if they like to work with the program, if they want to continuous work with the program, and we saw impressive numbers, because 92% of teachers say that they want to keep the programs. 85% of the teachers said that they saw better behavior in their students. There are some teachers, they say that they have no more to have to interfere in the conflicts in the kids. We have 85% of teachers says that they lose less time to organize their classes because of the behaviors. And we had 87% of teachers said that they are learning better. The students are improving their learnings. Yes. This is our, sorry, just to explain that this is not instruments, that we didn't use instruments, to use questions and try to understand what they feel about it. But the instruments and the whole thing, Dana McCoy is doing her job about this research.
Mm-hmm. I mean, that's wonderful. If you talk a little bit about kind of the process behind setting up research, I think there's a lot of people who are doing work similar to yours that would love to be able to do research similar to what you're doing. So you can talk a little bit about how you made this happen.
We have a team in the municipalities that we work. And they go to schools. We have, for an example, in Boa Vista, that I'm explaining about it, we have 72 schools there, and you have a team that they go to every schools every month. So every teacher has one part of our team to go there and to help them to improve the quality of their classes. So they are very close to the principal of the whole schools. So we create the questions that we really need to know and to show for the Secretary of the Education that they are investing in this. So they need to know how their teachers are thinking about this and how they are observing the changings and observing really get want to have this program. So we decide with the principals what questions. We just use a Google Docs with the link, and they give these answers, and we work with this with the Secretary of the Education, and we trying to with this making these new plans. So if this year we are doing this work with the families, doing these workshops with the families, it is because we saw in this questionnaire that it is a good way to help with the challenges of the teachers.
Mm-hmm. I have one more question, kind of from what you're talking about your research. You mentioned this wonderful statistic that I think you said 92% of teachers are reporting that they're glad that they have this program. How do you think that compares? I mean, you might not have, if you have statistics on this, is great, but maybe this will just be your impression. But how do you think that compares with what teachers were thinking before the program was rolled out?
That was really amazing. When we see the numbers, we just, wow. In São Paulo, we had not so many teachers, not 700 teachers, but in São Paulo, we had 100% teachers. I think it's about 80 or something. I'm not this number in mind, but we saw lots of teachers that in the beginning, they were very resistant. And then they just need to give 1, 2, or 3 classes, and they see that the things going from them to the inside out. Things are growing inside out. So because in the beginning they are very worried about, they are not very empathic, they are not very good in that skills, they are not very self-regulated, and how do they teach this? So we show that they are learning and teaching at the same time, and they realize that. Mm-hmm. I think the experience with the whole material class and the desire and the belief of the teachers, that they make the difference. Mm-hmm. We had very beautiful experiences. We're now making a movie with these experiences. Teachers are speaking, kids, all kind of different experiences and benefits of this program in their real life. So it's amazing. It's very beautiful, and then when it's ready, you can see everyone.
Definitely want to see it when it's ready. Yes. So just I'd like to wrap up this conversation just by asking you to think. So there are people on this right here right now, and a lot of people that are going to see this later who are either working on work similar to yours or are planning to do work similar to yours in their community, in their country. What is your nugget of wisdom? What's a bit of advice that you would have for people that are looking to follow in your footsteps in their community?
I think I want to say that the impersonal things are very important, but nowadays we have to have another ways to do this. This time the teachers are in the vacations, collective vacations. We don't know how the thing's going to be in the next 2 or 3 months, But I think the most beautiful thing and passionate thing in our job is, I think when we touch the teacher, the next generations will be effective by this kind of education, effectiveness, loveness. I don't know how to explain this, but the social emotional learning. We always work with the teachers because the teachers work with the kids. So we are talking with the teachers. So we know that when they are sensitized about it, the next generation that they're gonna teach the kids, we will go pass from their hands. They will be better educated. I'm sure.
All right. Well, thank you so much for joining us, Marcela. It's really been a pleasure. I'm glad to have finally a chance to meet you, since I've heard so much about you up until this point. And I think we all look forward to hearing more about the work that you're doing with Programa Capasso in Brazil, and definitely let us know when the movie comes out, because we'll come and see it. So at this point, I'm going to hand this off to Dominic, who is going to introduce us to our next session.
Thanks, Matt, and thank you, Marcela, for that amazing presentation and discussion. So the next session is really about new tools which have been developed to support the global SEL community. We've got two fantastic presenters, Stephanie Jones from Harvard and Roxanne Carres from New York University. Stephanie's going to go first, and she'll speak for about 15 minutes about an amazing resource called Explore SEL. So Stephanie, welcome.
Hi, everyone. I am trying to, there we go. Okay, so Dominic, you will nod when I ask you if you can hear me. Yes, okay, that means other people can too. So what I'm gonna do is quickly share my screen and tell you a bit about this site that we developed called Explore SEL. So here we go, let's see if this works. All right. Okay, so you should be able to see, you should be able to.
Yes, we can.
Okay, perfect. All right, so I'm going to give you just a very quick overview of this site that we developed and launched in late October 2019. I should say, even before starting, thank you so much for including us in this day-long event. It's super exciting, and we're happy to share all of our work with you and hear about what others are doing. So I should also note that I'm home with my family and they are walking around. So, okay. Explore SEL was designed to respond to what we noticed in the field is a real challenge with the terminology of social emotional learning and related fields. And what we found was that it was very complicated to communicate across different disciplines about what was included in the broad domain. And that's not necessarily a bad thing, because it means that there are lots of disciplines and lots of viewpoints and lots of ideas contributing to the field, but it gets hard to figure out exactly what everyone means by the words they use. So when is self-regulation the same as or different from something like self-management or self-control? And so we decided that we would respond to this challenge by trying to connect all of this terminology, and we decided we would do it by thinking hard about the frameworks that are used to define the field. And those frameworks are adopted by different disciplines, they're adopted by different organizations, by school districts even. So those frameworks become really important in the conversation about what's included or what's represented in the broad field of social and emotional learning. So why does any of this matter? It matters because without really precise connections between what we know, which is research, and what we do or design, which is sort of often programs, interventions, practices, policies, all the stuff that we do in the field, and then how we assess and evaluate the things that we design, it's very hard to be sure that we're targeting the right thing, that we're measuring the right thing, that that we're really connected across these three key parts of the research to practice cycle. And so what we've learned over time and what we've tried to communicate with the field is that it's really the terms, the language that we use that connects those key parts together. Research to what we know, which is research, to what we do, to what we expect to change. And so when that those boxes are not connected by the terminology, we may misfire. So we might design things targeted to one thing, but measure another thing. We may end up wasting time and money and effort on things that aren't designed to target what we're really hoping to target. And there should be a third bullet on this slide, which is that we struggle with communication. And one of the key tenets of the whole field of social emotional learning is sort of clear communication, solid connected relationships. And so if we're not able to communicate across frameworks or disciplines or ideas, we'll really struggle in this domain that we all agree is so important. So we designed a system for, as we describe it, for navigating the field. And we did that by gathering all the frameworks that define the work that we all do and coding them. So we created what we sort of describe as something similar to a Rosetta Stone, which allows anybody using the site to see how different skills and terms are defined in different frameworks, how they are linked to other things that might have the same name or a different name in other frameworks, and ultimately to communicate very clearly and precisely across disciplines, across perspectives, across sectors in the field. So what we've designed is a set of tools that are housed on the Explore SEL website. The tools include framework profiles, which is general information about each framework, the background of the framework, all of the things that are included in the framework, a set of interactive data visualizations that allow you to compare frameworks and look closely inside frameworks, and then a thesaurus of all the terminology that comes out of those frameworks. And I should say that the set of frameworks included on the site include both frameworks that are grown in the US, but also frameworks that come from all over the world. So this is the URL for the site. I will just show you a couple of pages from it. Whoops, here it is. So this is the homepage of the site. You can go into each of these three tools and look more closely at frameworks. So this one allows you to compare the relative emphasis of different frameworks in different key areas in this broad field: cognitive, emotion, social, values, perspectives, and identity.
Staff, we can only see the slide for URL.
Oh, you can't? Huh. Hold on. Thank you, Larry. Was that Larry? Hold on.
So far.
There we go. Now can you see the site? Yes? No?
Yes, we can. Yes, we can.
Yes.
Excellent. Okay. So I'll go back a tiny bit. This is the homepage of the site. There are three major sort of visualizations or tools that are accessible from the homepage. This tool, which is comparing skills across frameworks, essentially allows the user to look and see what the sort of relative emphasis each framework has on different skill areas. And these skill areas are derived based on a comprehensive and many-year literature review that allowed us to sort of define the major boundaries of the field and get very specific about the kinds of skills and competencies that are included, and served as the backbone for our coding system. And so you can see across all the frameworks that are included on the site how they distribute their focus in these different skill areas: cognitive area, emotion area, social, values, perspectives, and identity. You can also sort them by domain to see which framework emphasizes each domain the most. You can sort by emotion here. And then you can also sort within those categories by the sub areas within them. So here is within the emotion domain, sorting by emotion, knowledge, and expression. You could sort by emotional and behavioral regulation, and so on. Going back to the home page and to the next tool, which allows you, a user, to come along and say, okay, sorry about that, how different frameworks compare. So I might pick something like the Castle framework on this side, and something over here like the Mesh framework. And you can see where terms were coded as being similar or not at all similar to each other. So for example, here, self-management is coded as being quite similar to self-management. Self-management in Castle is being coded as quite similar to self-management in Mesh. The key point is that here is that even though Castle and Mesh use the same terminology, something like self-management, as it happens, they're very similar, but their definitions aren't the same. So they have some different elements to them, and that's evident by this not completely super thick line between them. Here we have responsible decision-making and social awareness. These were coded as being slightly similar, which means they share some aspects of their definition, but not everything. Okay, going back to the third tool, which essentially allows a user to come along and see where different skills appear across all the frameworks. And this one is a little complex to navigate, but one thing that's kind of interesting about it is that you can select a domain and a particular skill within it, and then see where it appears in every single framework that's been coded. You can also see, when you click show over there, you can see all of the components that go into that particular skill. So attention control is represented by these key behavioral benchmarks, which is very useful for those who are really interested in learning about sort of what's embedded in social emotional learning in these key domains, and what are the kinds of things I might see or expect if I'm really focused on something like understanding social cues. What are the elements of that? And then finally, there's a thesaurus. So if you go back up to the top and click on thesaurus, it basically has every single term included in every single framework in it. You can pick a particular term in one framework and see, if you go down, all of the terms from other frameworks that have been coded as similar to that one. There are lots of other uses for this, but my time is up. And so I'd be happy to answer questions. I will stop sharing my screen right now. Thank you.
Stephanie, amazing. Thank you very much indeed. You can see from the comments, the reaction from the community to that and how powerful a tool it is. I wondered if I could ask a quick question before we hand over to Roxanne, and being mindful of time, but is it an evolving project, and are you continuing to add new frameworks from around the world, or is it now fixed for a period of time?
So it's fixed right at this moment. But we have lots of projects in the works that will result in more frameworks being added to the site. We're doing projects with individual states, individual countries, where we're building kind of a shadow site that has the same components to it, but includes just the various frameworks that their system is focused on. And so there are lots of opportunities to expand the site, both by building out the database of frameworks, but also over time connecting terminology to strategies and practices that have been tried or tested, and ultimately to measures. So measures that might be closely aligned with one particular skill or competency or another. So ultimately, we want to build each part of that system. So the skills and competencies, strategies and practices, measures.
So if people who are part of this conference work within a framework which hasn't already been coded, then is there a process for submitting frameworks for consideration to be added in the next phase?
Yes, they should write to me. Is my email address on the slides? Probably not. It might be in your.
We can certainly share it. Yeah, we can share it.
And Brian Nelson, who leads this project, I can spell his name and email address for you. So it's Brian, B-R.
Well, you could type it into the into the
that's
chat
right.
function. Thank you.
Okay, I need to be better at Zoom.
We're all going to get a lot better at Zoom and other
My
platforms.
job depends on it. Okay, hold on. Whoops. Hold on. I will type it in here.
And a final, just a sort of geeky question, just the amount of research and coding that goes into adding a new framework. What's the rough amount of time it takes to map a new framework into the existing structure?
As it turns out, it doesn't take much time at all. Now that the structure is built, the actual coding isn't all that time consuming, and the upload to the site is also not that time consuming because it's all algorithmic at this point. So it's not, sorry, I just sent you, Dominic, Brian's email.
Great, I can share that with everybody.
Everyone else. It's not time consuming to code. It's not time consuming to upload data to the system and update those visuals. What's complex is that it's not automatic yet. So ultimately, we want to be able to create, and maybe through machine learning, there's some way to do this, make it so that the site is autonomous, so that folks can submit their framework and it can be coded automatically, added to the system. So, and we're not there yet, but it's definitely in our sights, and we'd welcome advice or collaboration on the kind of mechanics of doing that kind of work. We would love to hear from anyone on this list or who's listening who has the kind of tech background that would allow us or help us think about how to do that.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, and thank you for sharing Explore SEL with us today.
Thank you.
I'm going to move on to Roxanne Carres now from New York University and the Global Ties project, who's going to talk about a related tool, the SEL Measurement Library. So Roxanne.
Thank you so much, Dominic. And I am going to just put up my slides here, if I can figure it out. Okay. Can everyone see the slides? Dominic?
Yes, we can.
Okay. All right, great. All right, so I am really excited to be able to share with you today about the Manat Measurement Library, which is a new resource that was developed in collaboration with our colleagues at the International Rescue Committee and is hosted by the Interagency Network for Education in Emergencies. And it's something that we at NYU Global Ties have been working on for about a year and a half. Today, since we have a short amount of time, I'm going to just dive in and talk about the library specifically. But if you have any questions about kind of the process and how we got here, my email address is at the end of the slides, and I'm happy to follow up on that. Okay. All right, so just a little bit of background in terms of why we decided to work on developing this library. We know that there is a lot of different reasons that you would use evidence and a lot of different ways to support children's learning and development with evidence. And this is something that you'll see a little bit further in the presentation that's built into the measurement library, but we do know that this type of evidence is something that is really necessary to help make programmatic and policy decisions. And one of the things that we've seen is that, especially in the Middle East, North Africa, and Turkey region, and in conflict-affected contexts, there's really very limited evidence available to help make these types of decisions. So, for example, in 2019, there was a survey done that found that there were fewer than 20 randomized trials of education programs in crisis contexts. About 2/3 of countries on the World Bank's list of fragile contexts have never taken part in international learning assessments. But we do know that there are a lot of researchers and practitioners and policymakers who are doing program monitoring. However, the research base that we have is really limited, and a lot of the information that we have is coming from Western populations. So in this review of articles, we found, this isn't work done by us, but it was found that only 6% of studies in leading peer-reviewed journals were about non-Western populations. So really thinking about globally, but narrowing in on the MENA region and Turkey and conflict-affected contexts, we really saw that there was a need for increased research to be done. And in order for that research to be done, there needed to be tools that had evidence of reliability and validity within those contexts. So with this, we started a measurement and metrics initiative to try to generate more evidence on these types of tools to be used to generate this type of evidence moving forward. And we worked with a consortium of 8 research practice policy partnerships who really led the start of the resources that are available on the measurement library. And it is a living library, so things will be built in onto that. But what's available there now is really a result of the work that was done by all of the partnerships in the consortium. And there is more information on the consortium available on the website as well. Okay, so rather than trying to click over to the website, I have some screenshots for you because Zoom is a little tricky for me sometimes. So when you go into the measurement library, this is the landing page that you'll see. And the resources that are available there now include measures of social and emotional learning, but those aren't the only types of measures that are available. So if we were looking for a measure for social and emotional learning on the measurement library, there's 2 ways to access that. I'm going to walk you through one of the ways of doing that. So when you scroll down on this page, you have the option of clicking on this button that says if you're not sure what you're looking for, and it asks you a few questions to help really identify what the best suited measurement tool is for the purposes that you need that measurement tool. So as I mentioned kind of at the start of the presentation, there are a lot of different types of evidence that help us make these types of decisions. And making sure that you have the appropriate tool for that purpose is something that's really, really important in order to have the type of data that you need to really have confidence in the decisions that you would make around programs or policies or those types of things. So the first set of questions will ask you for why you're conducting an assessment, what you want to be using the data for. In this screenshot, we see that it's program evaluation. And then there's a second set of questions which ask what you're interested in measuring. And here we have 5 different categories. There are some measurement tools that will have multiple of these categories within them. The way that this selection process works is anything that has some questions related to one of these categories will be identified once it's filtered. So here we're looking for measures that assess social and emotional skills. So once you finish the quiz, the website will generate for you a list of the measures that fit those criteria. Here you see 3 of the measures that are currently on there, and we're going to actually look at the landing page for the last measure that's listed here, the social emotional response and information scenarios, or SERE. And this is what the landing page looks like. So we really, really wanted to provide users with enough information that they could identify measurement tools that were really fit for the purposes that they wanted to be using them for, and to give them enough information to really think about how that'll fit for the purposes they're using it for. So there's a few different things available on this landing page. You have the title of the measure and when it was published and who it was published by. So this is a measure that was actually developed and tested in partnership between NYU Global Ties and the International Rescue Committee. It then identifies the uses. So in this case, program evaluation and basic research, and the resource category, which is social emotional skills, as well as the age group that it was tested in. So this measure was tested with 5 to 16-year-olds. And all of the measures will identify what age group it was tested with. And then you have this header, which has a few links. The website can be a little bit difficult to navigate, so we wanted to make sure that these links were available on all of the landing pages in case you need to click back, which is the Minute Measurement Library. That'll take you back to the landing page. There's also a measure review criteria page that outlines how we really did the vetting process of these measures. What were the things that we considered before making recommendations of what types of adaptation or how confident we are in the evidence for this to be used in similar contexts in other places. And I'll talk a little bit more about that criteria in just a minute. And then the third link is for measure guidance, which is a resource that we put together to really help users think about all of the decision points along the way of identifying a measurement tool, and when to consider adaptation, what type of adaptation we would recommend moving forward. So that is a really valuable resource as well to consider, and I'll preview that just a little bit as well later. And then there's a bit of an abstract that gives an overview of where the measure was tested. There is this icon with the trees, which I will talk about a little bit later, but each of the landing pages have these, and this is the result of the vetting process that we went through. And then at the very bottom, you have links. The languages that are there are the language that the measurement tool itself is available in. And those are zip files. So once you open up those zip files, then there's actually a set of materials that are included in those, including the measurement tool, a technical working paper that has some of the psychometric analysis, and training materials, enumerator training materials, so that you can hopefully get some additional support if you're trying to train users of the measurement tool yourself. So this is the criteria that we set up to do the vetting of the measurement tools. And there are three categories of how things are looked at on the measurement library. The first is this little seedling, which we've categorized as under development. For measures that are categorized as under development, because we're not really confident in the evidence that was generated, we do ask that you reach out to the developer if you're interested in using that measurement tool, and they can really help you understand why it might not have worked so well when it was tested in their own context and give you guidance. For the other two types, so the sapling and the full tree, the measurement tool is available on the website, but we provide different levels of caution for how to use those measurement tools. And the materials that I talked about in terms of the measure criteria will give you more information about why the different measurement tools were categorized in these ways. We also really want to highlight that the tool alone is just a tool, and it's really important to consider all of these different elements when doing assessment measurement for whatever purpose you're doing it. In thinking about who is reporting, the method used to collect information, when and where the assessment is conducted, and the adaptation choices that are being made. And the measure guidance materials help you think through some of these questions as well. So within the measurement guidance, there is kind of this flow chart to walk through to really ask yourself questions about whether or not the measure itself that you've identified is really a good fit for what you're trying to use it for, or if there are kind of adaptations that need to be made, or if you need to look for another measure that might be a better fit. So that's all included on the measurement library. And in addition, the materials that I mentioned in those zip files, including the enumerator training materials and the technical working paper, we do really encourage all of the users to review the technical working paper. It's organized in such a way to really give information about how well different items were working within the measurement tools, recommendations that we have for making adaptations to that. And it's a really valuable resource with a few cover pages that are meant to be a little bit easier to digest for people who might not be as savvy with psychometric properties and those types of things. So those are all included. And just at the end of my time here, I did want to also note that currently on the website, there are 7 resources that have some focus on social emotional learning. And 2 of those are identified as ready for purpose. So the ISELA, which was tested with British-speaking Syrian refugees in Iraq, as well as Saray, which was tested with Syrian refugees in Lebanon, both met the criteria for ready for purpose with adaptation for context. And those are available right now on the website. We are adding measures regularly to the website and would really encourage folks to actually get in touch with us if they have measures and evidence of how those measures are functioning in their context that they would like to contribute. We're hoping to also expand this beyond the Middle East, North Africa, and Turkey region. So it doesn't need to necessarily fit within that specific region in order to be built in. And we also have on the website currently an inventory that has just 10 measures in it. They're not vetted in the same way that the other measures on the website are, but we really wanted to pull together as many resources as possible. We are working on doing some additional coding of that measurement inventory to make it a resource that is more widely available. There are over 100 measures in that inventory, so that's forthcoming, but if there are folks who are looking for things more urgently, then feel free to reach out to me and I'm happy to share that with you. So I will stop there. I think I'm at time.
To the second. That was fantastic, Roxanne. Thank you very much. So one of the questions that came through on the chat function was if people have measurement tools that they'd like to be considered, can they send them directly to you?
So we're still working on setting up the exact kind of system for doing that. I think for now, it's probably best to get in touch with me directly. I will probably forward them along to our colleagues in the Interagency Network for Education and Emergencies. We're working right now on developing a reference group actually with them who will really be the main actors in terms of reviewing submitted materials to be added to the website. But for now, definitely get in touch with me and I'd be happy to direct the materials in the direction they need to be going.
Amazing. Thank you very much. And thank you also to Stephanie for 2 fantastic presentations about really interesting and powerful new tools which are going to help the community develop SEL practices. So we're now moving into the final part of the conference, and I'm going to hand over to my colleague Jennifer Adams, who's going to take us through that.
Hi everybody, my name is Jennifer Adams, and Dominic is one of my colleagues on Karanga. I'm also on the executive committee, and before doing this work I was the Director of Education and Superintendent in a large school district in Ottawa, Canada. So I think all of us are living a very unusual circumstance, obviously from a health standpoint, but from a delivery of learning standpoint as well. And so we thought in this last session, before we end the session this morning or this afternoon, depending on where you are, that we'd open it up to a community conversation. All of the participants are welcome to participate in a conversation around what are your needs for SEL right now. We know that we've got people on the line that are from the K-12 sector, from post-secondary, out providing resources in ministries of education, etc. So this is now the time for us to share as a community. There is a raise your hand function at the bottom of your Zoom screen. So you'll see there's a tag for participants, Q&A, share, chat, etc. And there's a raise your hand. If you would like to come into the conversation and either say something that your sector is doing to help in this situation with COVID-19, or a particular need that you have, and we will respond to each other's questions. So I'm going to open it up now and feel free to jump in. Matt is going to kind of coordinate this, and he will hand the screen over to you once you've put your raise your hand function on. In the meantime, I'll just, as we're waiting for some things to come in, I'll just quickly talk about what's happening here in Canada. Provinces have jurisdiction over K-12. They have been closing down schools. Many of our schools are closed down for either a 2-week or a 3-week period, but of course there's more and more talk about how it will be provincial direction to close them down for a much longer period of time. So in talking with my colleagues that are running school districts, they're very much looking at how do we move to more remote learning. And as the conversation has gone this morning, we know that social emotional learning at this time is going to be that much more important. So any comments, Matt, if you can put them forward?
Well, we're still waiting to hear if people want to join in this conversation. I know it's a little bit of a shift from conference to conversation, but we would really like to have a chance to have everybody jump in and share what's going on, because your experiences are critically important, and we would like to be able to be here to learn and support what you're doing. I can also. Oh. Go ahead.
I gave an example, Matt, of a K-12 situation in North America, but would love to hear other K-12 situations around the world so that we can hear what's happening in different jurisdictions, as well as maybe something from post-secondary, and obviously connected to SEL and how we can help each other out.
I mean, I'd like to jump in and talk about this for a little bit. I think I'm kind of seeing things in a couple different perspectives. For myself, I have the luck to be kind of to hear a lot from a lot of different. Oh, got a hand. I really appreciate that I get to hear from educators around the country and how they are working so hard to meet students' social emotional needs at this really critical time, because this is a very disruptive experience for children and teachers and educators and everybody needs a little extra support right now. And there's a lot of people that are working very hard to make that happen. And I also just think, I kind of want to share, my wife is a teacher and her school is closed, and she teaches students who are from disadvantaged backgrounds and kind of a high needs population. And I just, something that really struck me, she was telling about the days leading up to her school closing, and they're closed for at least 6 weeks. When they announced it, the students were like, whoa, yay, extra break. And they were really excited. And then they came back the next day for their last day of school. And she said that they were very somber and worried. And I think it's a real reflection of how once it sunk in for them, how impactful this was. She said she'd never really seen these students be that way before, and how they were kind of trying to process what was going on. And I think it really speaks to the need for us to meet students, not just their academic needs right now as schools are closed, but also their social and emotional needs. And I just want to say thank you to everybody who's doing that work right now out in the world.
Thanks, Matt. I think we have a hand up, right?
We do. Mark wants to talk. Mark Sparvel.
Yeah, thanks, Matt. And Jen, I guess just picking up that topic, one of the things that I've been hearing a lot about is the need to, consider trauma-informed practices at this moment in time. So I'm puffing because I've been walking. A lot of schools and systems are moving to sort of remote education delivery. But it's different. It's not planned. It's unplanned, unexpected, and unprecedented. And we've got lots of young people who are quite frankly traumatized. They're worried. They're worried about different things that adults are worried about. So, trauma-informed practices, developing emotional intelligence, providing spaces and places for, kids and young people to talk about how they're feeling right now is critical. So I guess my question, and I'll put it in the SEL and Edu Facebook group too, will just be around if people are considering trauma-informed practices alongside instructional design as they move into remote learning. Over.
Yeah, I really appreciate you calling that out, Mark. I think for me, I've done a lot of work with trauma-informed practices and their connection to social emotional learning. And it's always been something that you do to support some students in some situations. And I think that with this global crisis right now, we can now unfortunately say that trauma-informed practices are for everybody, because everybody is experiencing trauma to some degree or another from this. So the call out for that is much appreciated. Thank you.
Thanks, Matt. That's helpful, and thanks, Mark. I think we, as in school districts and certainly in post-secondary, my connections there is that we always knew that there was a very strong relationship between academic learning and social emotional learning, and the connection between learning and well-being. And at a time like this, we know that from the well-being platform that social emotional learning can help build and solidify that foundation. And certainly it's a time for all of us that are connected in ESL to be out there and to be helping districts and post-secondary institutions and ministries to be able to get that out there. Matt, do we have anyone else that would like to jump in and talk online?
Well, oh yes, we do. Patricia Bray, you're on.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
And Patricia, welcome. Thank you so much, Patricia. And over to you, your comment or question.
Well, I have a lot of wonderful thoughts. Thank you for this wonderful, enlightened, and timely conference. That's a global conference. I'm in Houston, Texas, and we have a Bridge Up program at the Menninger Clinic, which is a psychiatric behavioral health hospital system. And we were fortunate to be able to put in a social emotional learning program 5 years ago in multiple school districts around Houston. And the main key is that we do social emotional learning with our adolescents, but we tie it to identification of kids who are at risk of mental health issues or mental illness issues. And then we partner up with all of we give grants. We've given $4 million to school districts and not-for-profit organizations and providers like federally qualified health clinics to work with our schools hand in hand. And are we needing that now? Because these kids that are usually in very poor school districts, they are living in impoverished neighborhoods, they're underserved, they're disadvantaged, and they don't have access to any kind of behavioral health or mental health. And we use the CDC's definition of the whole child. But what we're doing now with all of our schools closed is we're struggling with how to continue the mental health and the physical health access to these kids through our partnerships and our network. And so we have 49 partners, and about 20% or 25% of them are providers that can actually help these kids. So maybe this would be something that we could think about with all of the people that are doing SEL on this call, is that if there's some way that they could find a connection to these providers who treat children, then it might be something that we could help share our model on how we've done that. It's taken a long time to ramp up, but right now we're learning how to act very quickly.
Thanks, Patricia, and that's really helpful. We know in school systems there's a really, particularly over the last 5 years, there's been a ton of good work where school systems are building supports internally to help provide mental health support for not only students but staff as well, and that they're also connecting with community partners like the one that you're talking about that provide excellent levels of support that we'd never be able to provide internally in the school districts. So this concept of being able to, in times where the children aren't physically coming into the buildings, how do we make sure that those supports are still available in a time of social distancing, et cetera? So that's a really good point. And just for the participants on the line, what we will be doing after this is we'll be looking at the different Q&A questions that came in. We're going to look at the conversation that happened during this time, and we'll be thinking of what should be next steps. And again, over the next 10 or 15 minutes, would love to hear from more people as far as what are some things that we as a community of learners thinking about social emotional learning, what are the kinds of things that we can do together to support each other. Any other comments? Matt, do you have anyone else?
Oh yeah, we've got some people coming in. So the next person who would like to speak is John Raymer. Here, I'm gonna, just a second, John.
Hi, John. Welcome, and let's share your thoughts with us.
Well, yeah, no, it is so gratifying to see what's happening here in response. I mean, everyone's available now. They're home, right? And they can connect online. And I feel so empowered by what's been shared here. And part of what led to this is the Compassion Games. We were at the Mahatma Gandhi Institute of Education for Peace and Sustainable Development, which has a blog on SEL for everyone, is focused on games for learning as well as many other relevant areas. And that's how we met the folks from Karanga. And we're so happy. In fact, today I believe is the anniversary, is the day to celebrate this 1 year. And that's what led to us proposing that we have this public assembly. The Compassion Games started a network, a global alliance. And at 1 o'clock Pacific time, which is going to be in about an hour and 15 minutes, we're inviting everyone to come and get deeper with each other on how we now use this medium that's available to us to connect this way. I mean, I feel we all just got smarter learning from each other as I sat here, and it was just beautiful to see. And I think now is the time for us to use this new medium that we're all becoming familiar with to weave our strategies together. And we'll be doing that in a public assembly hosted with amazing folks that aren't on this call now that are coming in just to support Karanga in empowering the Alliance and its plans going forward. So
that is wonderful. Thanks so much for that invitation. And we were going to highlight that, but you're exactly right. We're finishing this particular session in about 13 minutes, but then we have an hour break and we're moving into a time where it's called that public assembly, and a great opportunity to really talk about compassion and learning and thinking about those kids and staffs that are going to have a tough time over this next little while. So thank you. Next one, Matt.
All right, next one, Heather Anderson. I would love to hear what you have to say.
Hi, Heather.
Hi, thank you for taking my question, and really enjoyed today. My question is, how can we continue, or I wonder how we can continue to support parents around social emotional wellness? A lot of anxiety, certainly with external factors of the unpredictability and the inconsistency of our homes right now, but also being tasked with, setting up homeschools. And I just see a lot of barriers to this. I just want to reach out and, what we're seeing from our kids on the surface is there's a lot more going on under that iceberg. And I'm just looking for resources that are concise, that I can provide to our parents in our school district to take a breath and let's connect. But I would love to see more resources out there for parents right now. That another target audience that we talk about, but maybe it's just really imperative that we get some work or some information out to them.
Thanks a lot, Heather. It's a really good point. We've talked a lot about teachers and we've talked a lot about students, and parents are obviously becoming a really big player here. And our parents, if your jurisdiction is anything like what we're seeing in Ottawa, they're starting to reach out and ask questions. What is it? What are some great things that we can be doing along some of the academic skill development, but as well as the social emotional? So we'll put that on our list of a bit of a to-do list to be thinking about. Are there resources that are ready to go and that are designed specifically for a parent audience? We know that social emotional learning takes place in multiple contexts. We heard Susanna, for example, talking about what it looks like in development in informal education settings like the Scouts. We know that it takes place in formal education settings, but we also know that it takes place in the home and it takes place in the community. And the home environment, obviously, in the next number of weeks are going to be front stage and center. So it's a great question. We will take a look into some of that and provide some follow-up.
All right. So next up is Alexander Laszlo. We appreciate you jumping on. I know people have been actually talking about some of your work in the chat session, so we're very glad to get a chance to hear from you.
Hi, Alexander. Welcome.
Oops. Technical issues on my end. Sorry about that.
So now I'm unmuted. Okay. And there I am with some strange background. Okay, cool.
It looks very healthy, Alexander, and we're looking for happy, healthy environments. So go ahead, over to you.
There we are, having a cow. I just wanted to say how inspired I am by the interactions here, and this truly seems to me to be what Karanga does, is creating this kind of alliance community, and we are the ones who we have been waiting for, really, in the sense that we are able, through these kind of conversations, to connect, to synergize, and to then create new pathways forward. And I can already kind of tangibly feel the connections that are forming already among the people who are listening and who are interacting here. New connections are being made, and hopefully new projects even emerge from this. I wanted just to say I'm here in Argentina, in Buenos Aires, and here in the Southern Hemisphere, I'll speak for all the Southern Hemisphere, there's a lot going on along these airlines as well. Tremendous, wonderful initiatives. For example, there's an initiative here in Argentina called Spiritual Emotional Intelligence and Leadership, which is SEL, which is a beautiful project for elementary and high school students. And another one that I'm involved with called Meta Learning, with Meta with 2 T's. And it has to do with meta in terms of love and true commitment and connection. So just to remember that this is truly a global challenge, and that rising to this challenge through such vehicles as Karanga and through these kind of platforms that we're engaging in right now is part of being the change that we want to see in the world. I'm going to leave with one little resource here of an international organization that I'm also involved with. A lot of resources on that site. So, but I'll be sharing a bit more during the during the public assembly that's coming up in just over an hour. Thanks.
Thanks so much, Alexander. It's interesting. You know, a year ago, a couple of you have mentioned the idea that the statement on SEL came out of Salzburg Global Seminar exactly a year ago at this time, and it was released publicly on the International Day of Happiness. And Karanga was, we decided to form Karanga as an organization because we thought it was so important that social emotional learning not be specific to a particular continent or a particular country, that it really needed to be a global movement based on the research that we've seen. And we have a really interesting and a tough situation, but we now have a global context where we need each other more than ever. And it's an opportunity to really be sharing and creating that community. So Alexander, appreciate your role and your comments and your sharing of resources. We'll make sure that people have an opportunity to see those, and we'll hear more about that during the public assembly. Matt, over to our next Hands Up.
We've actually been getting a lot of really great messages in the comments in the chat, so I would like to kind of share some of those especially for the people who are going to be watching this as a recording, so you can benefit from some of what we're hearing. There's a message from Joel and Michelle, one or perhaps one or the other, and reads, given how important it is for our health and well-being to maintain a feeling of connectedness, we have been encouraging our friends and colleagues to begin to shift memes and start using the phrase physical distancing instead of social distancing or self-isolation. Indeed, many research studies over the years have actually identified feelings of isolation and social disconnection as presenting the highest health risk factors for poor health, low resilience, and vulnerability to disease. Thank you for sharing that comment. It really struck home for me. In my day job, I'm a community manager and try to build online communities, and we talk a lot in that industry around how people are increasingly lonely in the world, and how the role that online communities can actually play to help build that, as you're seeing right here, as we come together in this or in the public assembly that's going to follow this, that as we think intentionally about how we participate in communities during times of physical isolation, that we don't have to be we don't have to be as socially isolated as maybe we feel like we are right now.
So true. Matt, any other hands up at this point? Love to hear your voices.
There are no other hands up at the moment. I think perhaps it's time for us to wrap up.
we're pretty
yeah,
close
we
to
are
wrapping
right
up
at time. So
exactly. I was gonna take one more comment if we had it, but we'll jump into the wrap up. We've had the opportunity this morning. It was interesting that this whole conference was planned to be virtual from the start. This is not a conference that was supposed to be face to face. We decided that we would do it virtually, and of course, who could have known what we would be seeing on the actual day of the conference. So I'm really pleased to say that I think we've proven that we can connect professionally and emotionally as leaders in education. A huge thanks to Dominic and Matt and Mark for their role in pulling this together and for facilitating the conversations. The panelists this morning or this afternoon, depending of course where you are, have been fabulous. We saw a whole range of resources, tools for teaching, tools for measuring, and lots of really good examples of what it looks like on the ground in K-12 systems, out in informal settings, and in post-secondary. So a huge thanks to the whole group. We've got an exciting public assembly coming up in an hour, but I'm going to hand it over to Matt for a final comment.
All right, I just want to echo that thing. Thank you to everybody who has participated and joined us for this conference, this session. It's been wonderful. I am privileged to be a part of this. So I'm going to be pulling up right here the events that are coming up. So this session does not mean it's not everything that's happening today for the Karanga Global SEL Conference. We have 2 more events, as you've heard about. We have a public assembly hosted by the Sign Network that's going to be starting an hour from now. And this is a public online gathering to bring people together to participate, to discuss how to bring social emotional learning into the mainstream, a very timely topic of conversation right now. To join that, it'll be hosted on Zoom. And there's no need to register for it or anything. The link is available on karanga.org. You can see our site for this whole day right there. If you go there, you'll see the Zoom link. Just show up in an hour, click the link, and join. We are also going to be having another session coming up later on, starting in 4 hours from now. That's going to be another 3 hours session packed with new speakers talking about new things around social emotional learning. If you've enjoyed this session, you will enjoy that session. And also want to let you know that all the recordings of these events are going to be available online. So these conference sessions are being live streamed right now onto the SEL and Education Facebook community and Twitter feed. And as soon as we end, they will be available as recordings, so you'll be able to see them there. We'll also be looking to, and also the public assembly is going out very widely onto a lot of social networks, so you'll be able to see it in a lot of different places, and including the SEL and Education community. We also will be gathering the PowerPoints that you've seen throughout this conference and sharing them through the SEL and Education Facebook community in the near future. So with that, I want to say thank you, everybody. Go take a break, grab some food, and we will reconnect we will reconvene in an hour for the public assembly. Thank you all very much.
Great, thanks everyone. Thank you, Matt.
Thanks everyone.
Thank you, everyone.